Industrial Nation. Welcome. Today I'm joined with David. Hello, David.
Hi. Hello, Caroline.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
I don't know if everyone knows you today, so could you please start by introducing yourself?
Absolutely. My name's David Weinhaus. I lead partner sales enablement at HubSpot. I've been with HubSpot in 8 years in a variety of sales roles, and now I help our agency partners sell better and faster.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. We know each other because you've been training me a bit in sales. So I know that you've been training lots of salespeople, lots of leading roles in several companies. What's your biggest takeout on training out so many people?
Gosh, training so many people. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think most of the people that I train have not gotten into sales because they are dying to do sales and have dreamed of doing sales ever since they were little. They've gotten into sales because they have a business and they want to grow the business. So if anyone's read the Daniel Pink book, To Sell is Human, my biggest challenge is to try to bring out of people everyone can be a salesperson. Sales to me is really just helping people solve their problems and making sure you're spending time with the right people who have the problems that you can solve. So a lot of what we do is discuss how we can do that in a really natural way. We can take leadership of our conversations and we can spend more of our time helping the right people.
Okay, sounds great. And do you have like any funny anecdotes about training people? I bet that sometimes you must like stumble across some very funny stories.
You know, one of the reasons I love sales is because it really brings out our personalities. Everyone has different ways of doing sales. And one of the things that I do in the role play or in my class is I get to role play a lot with participants. So a lot of times people, when you're training salespeople, they'll say, I would do this or in a conversation, or I would do that. And one thing we like to do in our training is say, no, don't tell me how you would do it. Do it. I'm the prospect. You're the salesperson. Do it, like sell me, get into role. We're going to have a sales conversation. So that's always fun. It's a safe environment. They're not going to lose a real sale by doing a role play, but it's also fun because I get to throw them different challenges and hear how people respond. And occasionally people give me funny answers, or occasionally I stump people and they say, I'm sorry, can we just pause? I don't know what I would say here. And we do group training, so I can either give them a suggestion or one of their peers can give them a suggestion. So it's a lot of fun, and we sometimes have some funny conversations.
Yeah, I remember the role plays we had when I trained with you on the sales skills bootcamp, and I do remember that you're quite an actor as well, because you're able to get into the skin of so many different types of prospects, and that's just amazing to see. And we did have a lot of fun role playing.
You know, it's really interesting playing as a salesperson, playing the prospect. To your point, it's fun. You get to like be an actor a little bit. So if you like acting, you get to do that. But B, you also get to feel like what it feels like to be a prospect. So if someone asks you too personal of a question too soon, you have a reaction to that. Or maybe you're hoping to be able to tell a salesperson more, but they don't ask the next question. They don't follow up like you're hoping that they follow up. Prospects, they know a lot, but they're not going to talk some of them talk for 15 minutes, but they usually won't tell you everything at the beginning of a conversation because they may be shy, or they may not know how to do it, or they may be guarded. So a good salesperson can help a prospect tell their story in a way that's meaningful and productive. And when you get to play the role of a prospect, you get to see how a prospect might feel as you're doing it. So I encourage folks to play both roles in a role play.
Yeah, and that definitely helps you to see how you would react in the same situation and to like become a better salesperson afterwards.
Absolutely.
So you opened the next question for me, so thank you for that.
Sure.
Over the last few years, we've seen that like the job of a salesperson has changed dramatically. Like it's not the same job as it was 20, 30, 50 years ago. What do you feel has changed most in this job?
So I think my favorite stat, and you guys may have covered this in one of your podcasts in the past, but it reflects how the nature of buying has changed. And if we're going to understand selling, we need to first understand how buying has changed. And so the stat is that 57% of the buyer's research has already been complete by the time that they typically reach out to a salesperson.
That's
Okay?
huge. That's
It is huge, right? It's huge because in the past, the conversations would start off with a lot of that education, and a salesperson would be able to frame things, and a salesperson would have control of the call, but that's not the way it works anymore. The way it works now is that the buyer has done a lot of that research. They have their own way of looking at it because they've been to 6 different websites already and they've gotten different perspectives. And your job as a salesperson now is to figure out, can you help them, and to do it in a really efficient but also helpful way. And that's very different than trying to convince someone or to try to pitch someone your services when they come in uninformed, which is how selling used to be. Our job is
yeah.
totally different now.
Yeah, it's totally different because I remember, like, even today, I still get calls from a salesperson who are just pitching me for a phone. Like, you barely pick up the phone. They're like, "Oh, hi, this is Caroline. I'm selling you this phone and this contract and whatever." And you're just like, "I don't want to talk to you." I know all that already. So what I hear is that a salesperson is not anymore the one who knows everything. So they're more the one who's gonna give you an advice on how maybe this would go better with your context. Is context beginning to be more and more important today in the sales process?
Yeah, context is huge. I mean, you're totally right. When someone calls us and they have no context and they're not interested in the context, we get really mad because we're busy. Like, we
Yeah.
were busy before, but we're really busy now. So the context is really important. Part of how I view a salesperson's role, particularly a salesperson who's selling a complex product, which most of us are. Most of us are not just selling something, very, very simple, like a pencil, right? That's a
Yeah.
simple product. Most of us sell services, or we sell a product that's a complex product. And a lot of our job is figuring out, does the prospect need help, first of
Mm-hmm.
all? Or, they may not, they may just be interested, and that's fine. But do they really need help? Can we then help? So is the problem that they're having a problem that we can help with? And that's where, like, kind of product market fit comes along with a particular prospect. And then finally, do they want our help? So if they
Yeah.
have a product, if it's something that we can help with, and if there's a fit in terms of culture or personality or working together, then we've done our job and there's a potential sale there. Or if there's not a fit, if they either don't need help, if it's not the kind of thing that we can help with, or if there's not a fit, our job is to figure that out as early as possible, make it still a pleasant interaction, leave with a handshake and a smile, and then move on to our next prospect and spend our time with those prospects who do have needs that we can help with.
Okay. Yeah, that's I totally agree with you on that. Is that today people have so, like, you don't, people have so many different types of products and of context that if, like, your solution can be amazing for one type of industry, but it's not going to work for another type of industry or another type of context. So that's what shifted a lot, I think. But how do you figure all of that out? How do you figure out that you can or can't help, that they want or don't want your help? How do you figure all of that out?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's not always an easy thing to do. You got to put some work in to do it, and it's not just a salesperson sitting alone in their office. Typically, that happens at a company, and it happens in the marketing department, and it happens in the sales department, and it also happens with, here's a crazy concept, Caroline. It happens with the marketing department working together with the sales department.
No, you gotta
Yeah,
be kidding
crazy,
me.
right? Crazy concept. Like, actually people in marketing and sales talking to each other and figuring
God.
out, right? Figuring out like who should, as an organization, who should we be proactively seeking and who should we be spending our time with? And the channels are different. So what marketing is going to take that information and they're going to create campaigns and content and things like that. And sales is going to take that information and they're going to come up with a target list and they're going to come up with statements that would resonate with those prospects. But if they each have, if marketing and sales have different concepts of who they're trying to get in front of, or they haven't talked about it and really focused in on the top, maybe 3 to 5 characteristics of their target accounts, then the messaging is going to be much less powerful than it
Yeah.
would be otherwise. So it takes some conversation.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. And just to go back on like my reaction to saying that marketing and sales have to work together, I did it on purpose, of course. It's because to this day, I talk often to companies. We work with manufacturing companies mainly. And when talking to them, I often hear when I ask, like if I'm talking to a person in marketing and I ask them, how do you sell? How does it work? How many salespeople? What are the results and stuff? Often they're like, I don't know, you should ask them. And it's like kind of a gap between the two that won't allow you to have the greatest sales process later. Like your sales is also feeding your marketing as well as your marketing is feeding your sales. That's the whole thing. So you were talking about having a conversation that's important. And what you've taught me mainly is how to lead the famous exploratory call. Could you please explain to us what is an exploratory call?
Yeah. So again, this is in a kind of like a consultative or complex sales process. There are different parts of the process. So the way that the language that we use here at HubSpot is your very first live conversation with the prospect. We call that your connect call. And the purpose of a connect call is just to start establishing the relationship, make sure there's something to talk about, and then set up a call where you can go into further depth with the prospect. And that call where you can go into further depth with the prospect and explore their needs, we call the exploratory call. The focus on that call is to establish that relationship a little bit further, but even more so to figure out, going back to what we said before, figure out, do they have a need? And is that need something that you can help with? Mm-hmm. And then I wouldn't say the purpose of the exploratory call is to go through your entire solution yet. That would be a really, really long call if you spent time on the prospect and their needs and then your full solution. But it's to start to maybe tease your solution just a little bit, because then the third call in our process is what we call a goal setting and planning call, really with the emphasis on planning. So the third call is where you start to come up with a solution. But the second call, which is the exploratory call, is really focused on your prospect, understanding their needs, and again, figuring out if it's potentially a good fit and if you can help with those needs.
Yeah, I mean, the names like that you gave at HubSpot totally makes sense. Like connect call, you're just connecting with someone. You meet, it's like you're meeting someone in real life. You're just like, hey, how are you doing? What do you do? And stuff. So that's really important. Exploring, just the name makes total sense. And what I hear you saying is that you're gonna have these two first calls, the connect and the exploratory, but it's not yet the time to start pitching in your product and your solution and what you do. Is it because it's too early? Is it because you don't really know if you can't help yet?
It's typically too early. So the pothole that a lot of the salespeople that I see fall into is they hear a need, like in our world, the need may be expressed as a company might say, we need more leads, right?
Okay.
And then the temptation is to be like, okay, great. We can help you with that. We have a lot of things that we can do that can help you get a lot more leads. We're going to crush it together. And you say, do you want to hear about it? And the prospect says, sure, tell me about it. And then as the salesperson, now you're into solutioning mode. And even though the prospect is like, the prospect will always say, yes, tell me what you can do for me. But now you've put yourself in a position where you have great products, maybe you sell a lot of different lead solutions, but you don't really understand, well, do they really need more leads? Or or is there another solution to their problem? Why do they need more leads? What are they ultimately trying to do? What are their goals as a business? Do they have other alternatives besides lead generation? Maybe they should be investing in awareness campaigns or in customer service programs to existing customers would be a more efficient way to get to their goals. How valuable is a lead to them? Because how valuable is a lead is going to affect what type of recommendation I make on how much they should spend or how aggressive they are or what channels they should use. But because I didn't take the time up front to ask all those questions, and I've put myself into solutioning mode, again, going back to your comment before about context, I have very little context. And so what I'm doing now, as opposed to making a recommendation for them based on knowing their business and knowing what they're trying to do with their business, I put myself into selling mode where I'm just going to tell them how great I am at generating leads and how I've done it for 10 other people. They will nod politely. They will be interested, but they will start to be bored after about 3 minutes. All right. And then they will ask you how much it costs. And then you will tell them a price, or they will ask for a proposal, and you will never hear from them again. Because you don't understand their business and you haven't made a recommendation. What you've done instead is you've just pitched them your products.
Yeah, you've tried to sell something to them that you don't even know yet that they need. So what I hear from what you're saying is that the main goal of this exploratory conversation is to really go in deeper in understanding the meaning behind an objective. Because as you said, we often hear people saying, yeah, I need 500 leads a month. And you're like, okay, but why do you need 500? What does it come from? Is it the goal of the exploratory? Is it like finding the meaning behind all of this? How would you define it?
Yeah, it is. Sometimes I'll say it's getting the story, understanding the story behind the story. So a lot of times I think of it like, imagine how you might sell a close friend on your services, whatever your services are. Imagine that you were selling to a friend. If your friend came to you and they said, I have this business problem and I'm not sure where to go, you're probably not going to start selling your friend and everything that you do. What you're probably going to do is you're really going to try to understand where your friend is coming from. Like, why is this a problem for them? Why now are they having the problem? What would it mean for their business if they could solve the problem? What would it mean if they didn't? Maybe they shouldn't be doing anything. Why is it so compelling for them to do something right now? What's it worth to them to solve the problem? And you're doing that because ultimately, like, you want to help your friend. You want to give them a recommendation again. You don't want to give them a big list of everything that you could do for them. So in a lot of ways, your exploratory call is being helpful in the same way that you would be helpful to a friend. You want to understand everything so you can make a good recommendation.
Okay, that makes total sense. Is that today, and especially with the sales process we've talked about, it's more about building a relationship with the prospects and growing with him until he eventually becomes a client. But it's also gaining trust, and like you're giving him advice, he's gonna trust you, and in the end, it's a win-win situation. That's the
the only thing I'll caution is, so you talked about it's building a relationship with someone. I think you do build a relationship in this process, but that's not our goal. Our goal is not to build a relationship. Otherwise, it's going to happen, but our goal is to figure out, can we help this prospect? And the reason I make this out is because our mental mindset, what we're thinking about, matters. I don't want to be thinking about how can I form a relationship with this person, because then that's not what they want. Like, that's not a good use of their time. They're not looking for a friend. I mean, I'm going to treat them, I'm going to try to help them like I would help a friend, but that's not why I'm there, because they need a friend. I'm there because they have a potential problem that I can help them solve. So in the back of my mind is, not how can I sell this person, or how can I form a good relationship, or how can I even impress them? That's not what's going through my mind. What's going through my mind is, does this person have a problem? What's their problem? How important is their problem? And can I help them?
Okay.
And by thinking that, I'm going to ask them tough questions
Yeah.
that maybe they won't like me because I asked them, why do you need more leads? Have you thought about attacking, going after your existing customers instead of spending all this time and effort on leads? Or why do you need it in December instead of what happens if you waited till next June of next year to attack this problem? So I want to be able to ask them tough questions, and I don't want to be thinking I want to make this person like me. I want to be asking, I want to understand, do they really have a need for my help? And by thinking that way, instead of thinking like I want to form a relationship with this person, I'm going to be able to ask like tougher and better questions to them.
That makes total sense, actually. That makes much more sense than building a relationship. You're right. You're not trying to make a friend, but you still. I remember something you said during the training we had. You said to be genuinely interested in what the person has to say. And I remember that particularly well because I feel like when you talk to salespeople, sometimes they're often like semi-listening to you. They're like, yeah, okay, yeah, sounds interesting, yeah. But you can feel they're not really interested in what you're saying. They're just like, I'm going to let you talk a bit and then I'm going to just like shove my solution at you. And I do remember that very clearly. And another concept within the exploratory call that I remember pretty well, I think it's like, for me, it's the basics of the exploratory call. We talked about finding the gap. But what is finding the gap? How do you do that? What is it?
Yeah, so they're both kind of mixed together. This idea of listening with someone and finding the gap, because if you're just waiting for your turn to sell your product, then you're not going to listen. But if you're trying to understand what's the problem here that we're trying to solve, then you'll do a better job of listening. So the gap is what we call in our sales training program is kind of the definition of what that problem is or what you're trying to achieve with the prospect. All right, so finding the gap is really simple, actually. And finding the gap model says to understand if the prospect has a need to begin with, you have to understand first their baseline, so that's where they're at today. Then you have to understand their goal. So imagine a big white space between where they're at today and where their goal is. And then finally, you have to understand how far would the prospect advance on that goal without you. So whether it's on their own or if they're looking at other alternatives, how much can they close that gap between where they're at today and their future state? And what remains, right, that white space that remains is the gap. And so in other words, so in a call, I start usually with the current situation and say, how's it going today? Tell me what's going on. How's business? What are you working on? All right, that's a little bit about the current situation. Then I like to go to goals. Great. For next year, what are your key initiatives as a business? And then I'll get a little more specific on their goals. Awesome. How are you going to measure success? Or what does success look like? And why is that important for the business? So I've laid out the current situation and then the goals. And then I'm going to move to how
you have your white space.
Yeah, my white space. I've got my white space. And I like to ask by the way, I like to test that white space a little bit. So if they tell me they need 20% growth next year, then my question is why 20%? What if you get 15%? Is that still a big win for you? Or is that going to be super disappointing? Or what if you got 25%? Like, is that real? Is that something that would be meaningful? Is that something worth investing in? Or, and then I may say, what if it doesn't happen by December? What if you were late to the goal? Would that be consequential for your business? Or, so I'm kind of testing the white space a little bit. Okay. And it's helpful for me as a salesperson to know what I'm selling into. It's also helpful for them as a prospect because chances are they probably haven't put thought into those questions. And if they ever ask me, why am I asking those questions? It's because I'm going to say, eventually I'm going to come back to you with a recommendation and I'm going to ask for resources, whether it's time, money, your help, a combination of all three. And when I do that, I want to make sure that I'm asking for the right resources that align with your right goals and your right timing.
Okay.
So that's my white space. And then the final piece to find the gap is how much of that white space can they close on their own? So one of my favorite questions there is if they say they want to grow 20% next year is, well, great. So if we weren't having this conversation and you were to go about next year, and I'm sure you're going to work a little bit harder and a little bit smarter next year, but how much of that 20% would you close on your own? Okay. Or you look at anything else that's going to help you close that gap. Or as my colleague Dan would say, one of my colleagues, one of his favorite questions is that easy, medium, or hard to get there? And so what we're ultimately trying to do is figuring out, if the prospect can do it on their own, if they say we're trying to go to 20% and I can get to 18 on my own, then I might be like, all right, sounds like you just need a small change. I'm not sure if you really need us to do that. But most prospects have a pretty big gap. That's why you're talking in the first place. And by helping them define it, you can now summarize a statement of the problem. So how I typically like to end an exploratory call is something like, so Mr. Prospect, this is what I heard from you today. Your current situation is pretty good. You guys have been growing. You're doing a lot of different things. But I also understand for next year, you have a pretty ambitious goal, and that's a serious goal for you guys, and you have consequences to get there, by the end of the year. And you have some really good ideas in place, but it's only going to get you about halfway there. And so it sounds like to me, what you need help closing on that last 10%. You're not sure how to do it. And maybe there's an opportunity there for us to come up with a solution together. And that would be meaningful for you if we could. Is that right? And then they respond.
Yeah, and you're just like making sure as well that they're viewing the gap as much as you do. Like they're viewing the white space, they're viewing what they can do without you and what you can help them do. So I guess that's like very crucial in the process to make them see. Because usually it's the same for me when I talk to prospects. Usually they do have a plan. Like they have their goals, they have a plan to get to their goals, like them saying. So yeah, usually when you talk to a prospect, they're telling you, I have this goal. And I often ask, okay, what are your plans to getting to that goal? And usually they're going to tell you, oh, I want to redo my website, or I want to do this and that. And with them, you're just saying, oh, okay, so how do you feel do you feel like it's going to work? Do you feel like it's not going to work? And that's a bit what you said about asking the tough questions and challenging them. Usually that's the parts where I'm going to challenge them on the plan that they have. Like sometimes people are saying like, I want plus 20% next year. Okay, what are your plans to getting there? I'll just keep on doing the same. And that's like, that's finding the gap.
Right, exactly. And then you might ask, how confident are you in that? And if they're super confident, you got some work to do if you think they shouldn't be super confident. Or maybe they're super confident and they're going to get there. And your next question is, that's cool. Why are we talking today?
Yeah.
Is there something else I can help you with? Because it sounds like you can get to your goals already, but you'll go in a good place in the conversation.
So that explains a bit more what an exploratory call is and why it's important in the sales process. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to go over maybe some tactics and skills that you might need when leading an exploratory call, because as I remember from class and as I saw as a salesperson, it's not often a very easy conversation to have, because like there are a lot of potholes along the way that you should avoid. And I remember it because I think once we had a small role play together, and I just like went all in a pothole. And then you looked at me and you were like, stop taking the cheese.
Taking the cheese, yes.
Yeah, that's my favorite, I think. Why should you not take the cheese?
Yeah, so we all had this problem. Have had this problem as well. And if you think about a mouse with a mouse trap and a piece of cheese, it looks really tempting. We're mice, we love cheese. And in the sales, the cheese it's talking about what we're excited to talk about.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes back to that example before. If leads, in our business, helping prospects generate leads is something that we could we could talk all day about. And
Yeah.
we hear that, that's the cheese. And we're so excited to take it and to start talking about leads and how we've helped other customers generate leads, that we kind of go down this hole where we didn't ask all those questions. So we got to be a little patient as a
Yeah.
salesperson. You know, one of the things I was thinking about before is we were going over finding the gap, and you were sharing how you do that as well, is, you know, part of what we're doing in sales is we're storytellers.
Yeah.
We're building a story with our prospects, and we're not the hero of the story. As a salesperson, don't make yourself the hero of your story. Make the prospect the hero of your story. It's their journey. You're like the sidekick, right? You're like
Yeah.
the person
The best, like,
yeah,
the
you're like you're gonna be
best,
the best friend, right? I mean, well, not the best
you're
friend,
the
but
dog to the Shrek, or
yeah, you're like the donkey to Shrek, exactly. Except hopefully we're not, we're a little less annoying than Donkey was, right? But to build that story, you can't start telling your own story too soon. There's going to be a time and place for us to share how we can help them realize their journey, but to do that, we got to understand their journey first. So as
Yeah.
salespeople, we need to be a little more patient. We need to ask a few more questions. As you were mentioning before, we need to listen a little bit better, particularly early on in the sales process. And we have to resist that temptation to take the cheese, which is
Yeah.
making the conversation about us and not about them.
Yeah, and it's actually, it's a funny expression, like, don't take the cheese, but it's something I found in the beginning very difficult not to do, because usually when you're a salesperson for a company, you're passionate about the products or services that you're selling. You're convinced they're the best on the market, and so it's like, it's really a temptation. It's like a Pandora box that you could open and, like, just say everything about your products and your services and how they're the best and how we're going to help you grow better and do better things. But it could ruin all the work you've done before. And it could just, like, in French, we have a saying that's like grilling your bullet. It's like a literal translation, but it means to just, you've worked so hard and then everything falls down because you went ahead and were too greedy and wanted to, like, say everything too soon. So
That's
being
right.
patient, I think it's a great advice. Another thing that I like a lot, I actually have a little piece of paper with me every time I make a call with the best tips I got from you. And one of them is the 5 whys. And I know it's extremely important because we were talking about finding the gap. We were talking about the meaning behind the objectives. And that's the 5 whys help you to do, right?
Yeah. So the 5 whys is a great concept. I won't take credit. We won't take credit for it at all. It comes from, I think, Japanese manufacturing. And the idea of it was like root cause analysis. So when there's a problem on the assembly line, you say, why did that happen? Oh, the lights were out. Why were the lights out? Well, because the bulbs are not high quality bulbs. Or why don't we buy high quality bulbs? And so you kind of go on. And the idea behind the name of the 5 whys is typically you have to ask 5 whys to get to a root cause. So in sales, we're not so much looking for a cause, but we are asking for the motivation and why something is important to a business. So it's a useful concept to borrow for our purposes. And where it falls into that find the gap framework is typically as we're defining where a prospect wants to go. So that goal that they have. Oftentimes there's nice to have goals and need to have goals. And we want to sell into closer to, everyone has nice to have goals. If we can help people, great. But we also want to understand what's the need to have goals. So the 5 whys is a process that can help us to understand. And it's simply when we hear a goal like I need to generate more leads, we can ask, why is that? Or put another way, we can ask why questions in different ways. What would that mean for your business? Or why now? Or why 10% growth instead of 15% growth? And there's nothing really magical about that number 5. Sometimes you'll ask 8 why questions. Sometimes you may ask 2 or 3. but it's a way to be to understand what's going on so we can solve the root problem, not the first thing that we hear from a
Yeah,
problem.
because if you can't find this root problem and the why behind the objective, your famous gap might not be the same, because you can have like an objective that they're saying like plus 20%, but if you don't know why that's important for
Yeah,
them.
we've all had prospects go dark before, like that's part of sales, but it's because, and you're like, well, they told me this. They told me they needed to grow. They told me they needed to grow and needed to do it this year. I don't understand, why did they go dark? And that's because we got the superficial story, but we didn't get to the story behind the story. And asking those why questions helps us to really understand.
Yeah, that's another useful tip as well. Like it's not a tip, it's not a tactic, it's a skill to learn and to implement in the sales process. And there are so many of them, but I'm going to choose like my last favorite one. So many of them, I swear. It's like it's a bit frustrating, because I feel like we're gathering 8 weeks of classes together in 30 or 40 minutes, and that's very frustrating. Something I find I still have a bit of difficulty to do, because I'm a bit scared to fall into a pothole when doing that. It's the give and get approach. It scares me a bit, because I often feel like if I give too much, I'm gonna be taking the cheese and just start talking and like not stopping. But when I try, I do find that it's very useful to not make your prospect feel like you're asking a bunch of questions and gathering information and not giving anything in return, especially since, as we saw, we're in this exploratory phase. We're going to ask a lot of questions, trying to understand the meaning behind things, trying to uncover a lot. Why is this give and get approach so important in a sales process?
Yeah, so the idea of the give and get is, oftentimes we ask prospects questions, and some questions are very open and they'll share, and other times prospects are guarded, which is natural. Like, I don't blame a prospect for not knowing me and being a little guarded. So the give and get says, I'm going to go first. I'm going to share something with you that's valuable, and then I'm going to ask a question where I'm going to ask you to give in return, or for me to get. So that's kind of the concept of the give and get. And so on an exploratory call, we've already talked about asking questions, and that we don't want to go real deep into our solution yet. But one thing that we might combine with the give and get is we might tease our solution, or make our prospect curious about our solution. So we might just give just a little bit of our solution, not so much where we're going to spend a half an hour talking about it, but enough where we show that there's a chance of helping them. So for instance, Caroline, you and me, we sell marketing services, of which one of the tactics that we use is blogging.
Yeah.
So I might say to a prospect, Mr. Prospect, I know one of the reasons we're here today is because I said I'd share some thoughts with you on your website. Here's a tip for you. I noticed you're doing a lot of blogging. They're awesome blogs, by the way. I read a ton of them. But I noticed, you told me you're trying to generate leads. I noticed you don't really have an offer at the bottom of each blog article that gives one of your prospects an opportunity to ask for more information, or to ask a salesperson a question. And so what I would recommend, whether you use us or not, or whether we end up working together, it doesn't matter. Just add like an offer at the bottom of every single blog article, and that will help you generate more leads. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Right. And they would say, yeah, that's a great idea. And I would be like, awesome. That will help you get more leads. Tell me, what would a good lead look like ideally? And, and then how many leads are you guys trying to get this year? And let's talk more about leads. So, what I'm kind of doing there is I'm adding some value. I've done some work ahead of time, so I know that tip. I'm adding them some value. And then we're talking about leads. So then they're sharing because I've shared, and that's the give and
Yeah.
get technique. It's very effective technique for leading a conversation.
Yeah, it is. And also it helps exciting your prospect a bit about the solution. Like they're saying, oh, they gave me great tips, and when you're good at this give and get approach, at the end of the call, you can feel the prospect being like, okay, I can't wait to get started. I
That's
want to go.
right. They're like, oh, I
And
want to know more from this girl.
yeah.
She's so smart. She told me one thing. I bet she has like 10 other things she's not telling me. I want to meet with her
Yeah.
again.
And you, the salesperson, end up being the one like, yeah, let's take it slow. We're going to get there. And
Right,
that's like the
exactly.
best feeling ever.
Exactly. I often like to say I got a lot more ideas where that came from. But let's talk about let's take a step back for a second, right? So
Yeah.
we're teasing that we have this, which we do. We do have this great solution, and we're letting them know that even as we're asking them all these questions, we're going somewhere. We have a solution, but we do just enough to add value and also make them very curious. Curiosity is a huge tool for us as a salesperson.
Yeah, it's really teasing, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we've covered quite a lot today already. That was very interesting, and I believe for everyone listening to us. So thank you for staying with us until now. And I just wanted, maybe as a conclusion, as you know, we work with the manufacturing companies mainly, and usually they're very traditional in their way of doing business. It means they do a lot of fairs, they go knocking on doors, they have cold lists of prospects that they're going to call, and everything. And a lot of them are starting to see the interest in inbound, the fact that you have to change the way you sell and everything. But often, when I talk to salespeople or sales manager, they can see the interest, but they don't really see how they could get started, applying this whole methodology. What would be your advice to them to get started on the methodology and start the thing going on?
It's a great question, and there are a lot of places that you could start. My favorite thing to start with, I mentioned before, like that conversation that happens between marketing and sales. Figure out, to be strategic in sales, you have to know who you help and with what problems. And you have to get a little disciplined about that. And it's okay sometimes if someone else falls into your lap that doesn't meet your profile perfectly, but in terms of going out and being proactive, you want to know what profile you're looking for, and you want to be able to tell people, we help with these kind of problems. So I would start with that. We call it we call it two tools. One's a prospect fit matrix. We lay out a bunch of characteristics and say a typical good prospect will have these characteristics. And then sometimes you can do a reverse one that says, and they, we don't help, this is not a good prospect for us. People that, don't need this or don't need that, or so we call that a prospect fit matrix, and that's very helpful. And then the other thing is kind of like your sales story, and the beginning of your sales story is, we typically work with these kinds of companies, and that goes back to your prospect fit matrix, who have these problems. So come up with the problems then that you help them with, and then start to weave it in just even a simple statement like that you can share with someone that says, we work with these kinds of companies, they have these kind of problems. Mr. Prospect, does that resonate with you? And that will start to get the conversation going. They will be excited to hear that. They will say yes or no, I have those problems, or I don't. They will start to talk about them instead of you talking about you. You focus that statement on your prospect and their problems, not your solutions. That will get your conversation rolling, and then just start to ask why questions, and you'll have great sales conversations.
Well, thanks, David. Thank you so much for this advice. And thank you for participating in our podcast today. It was it was a
sales is fun, Caroline, and you are Caroline is awesome, by the way, for anyone listening to this podcast, right? She's an example of someone who maybe didn't, I don't know, maybe you did, maybe you dressed up as a salesperson when you were younger, Caroline, imagining your future career. But Caroline's she's smart, helpful, person who is in a sales role, and her talents apply really naturally. And I feel like it comes out in this conversation, and it comes out in a lot of your conversations, that it's just being interested in improving yourself and improving people that you work with. So yes, this was.
You're making me blush.
Well, that was my way of saying it was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, David.